Hi everyone, Donna here with Bookkeeping Made Simple, and I am going to talk a little bit about some success habits, habits that highly successful people have. Not all of these are going to work for everybody, but it is a fact that success leaves clues, that most highly successful people do have similar habits. Some of them, like I said, I just don't feel like they work for everyone because not everyone is the same. But I do want to talk about the ones that I really feel are important to be successful. Let's start a little bit with talking about what habits are. Habits are those things that you do without even thinking about it. You know, I get out of bed, I take a shower, I brush my teeth. I don't even have to think. In fact, I'm not even awake when I'm doing any of those things, because it's just such an ingrained habit. That's just what I do. Habit stacking, by the way, is taking those habits and adding other things on top of it. So I go in and I take a shower, and while I'm in the shower, I add another habit to that. Or I go in and I brush my teeth, and while I'm brushing my teeth, I wipe down the countertop to create a habit, whatever it is. So it is taking a pre-existing habit, adding another habit to do at the same time, so that you're stacking your habits kind of on top of each other. And there are some misconceptions, I think, about some of the habits of successful people, but I'll talk about some of those as I come to them. The first habit that I highly recommend is reading. And by reading, I don't necessarily mean reading the latest bodice ripper romance novel. Well, I'm not referring to 50 Shades of Grey. I'm not referring to Danielle Steele, although those are really nice to do at the pool or at the beach or somewhere where you don't need, maybe you want to not think. I'm talking about reading books that are geared towards helping you be successful. Whether that is general personal development books, which I recommend, or books about your field. So if you're a physician, you probably are going to want to spend quite a bit of time reading up on the latest breakthroughs in your particular field of practice. If you're an attorney, you're going to want to review what was the latest case law, again, related to your field of practice. So if you're a family law attorney, you want to make sure that you're reading up on family law cases that may be relevant to your practice. As an accountant, I read a lot about different things that are going on in the accounting field. And I also am reading a lot, again, on personal development. I am a voracious reader. I read somewhere around 300 books a year. The minimum I read is about 100, and I read up to about 300. I also am constantly trying to learn. So anything that helps me do my job better, anything that helps me be a better boss, a better spouse, a better mom, a better daughter, a better sister, I'm all about that. And yes, I do also read for fun. So I'd say probably about 50% for fun, 50% for learning. However, the fact that I'm reading is fun to me. One of the things that absolutely baffled me, by the way, was way years ago, when I was finishing college. And I read a statistic that says something like 90% of Americans do not even crack another book after they finish their formal education, which is very much against my own experience. My father, who is very well educated, sets aside time to read about twice a day. He reads more often if he can. But first thing in the morning, he begins his day with reading. He ends his day with reading. In between that, he also spends a lot of time working. My parents live on a farm, so he spends a lot of time in the garden, a lot of time mowing, helping to take care of my mother, doing other things. But he does have dedicated times that are specific for reading. And that was the example that I saw. I also saw my mother, who is very successful in her own way, but she saw reading as being a negative. The reason she saw reading as being a negative, she's a boomer. Actually, she and dad are both silent generation, so they are in their 80s. And she saw her older sister put reading ahead of taking care of business. So her sister would read instead of cleaning the house. She would read instead of tending to her children. And it's important to make sure that while it's important to read, you also have to make sure everything else gets done. So that kind of left her with a bad taste in her mouth about reading. I am trying to follow kind of both of their examples. One, I have dedicated times when I read. Usually it's in the evening to try to help me fall asleep. I have dedicated times when I'm studying to learn about how to do my job better. And I also have times when reading is verboten because I need to make sure that I'm focused on the things that I need to do: house cleaning, cooking, taking care of my family, and taking care of my business. I can't really read during those times because it's important for me to be focused on other things. But the fact that you read, if you're a reader, you are going to be a leader. It's almost default. The other half of that, though, is if you're reading personal development or you're reading to improve your craft, you have to put those things into practice. And that was one of the pieces that I missed out on for many years. Now I read something and I immediately start trying to figure out how to add it to my life so that I can benefit the most from it. Now, I do also read for pleasure. So I do read novels, I read romances, I read things that I know aren't really going to do much more than relax me. But they are almost always something I can take something away from. Even the steamiest romance novel is something that I can take some things and analyze it and study it and learn how to be a better person from it. So number one, reading. Number two, exercise. One of the things that successful people understand is that in order for your mind to work clearly, and most people who are highly successful, they're either in the trades, which means their physical is part of their job, or they are in management, which means they're sitting at a desk all day. And if you're part of the laptop class, if you're one of those people that sits at a desk all day, you have to be very intentional about your exercise. When you exercise, exercise releases endorphins. And as Elle Wood, put it, endorphins make you happy. Happy people don't kill their husbands. Endorphins make you happy. So you want to enjoy those endorphins as much as you can. I am very bad about wanting to go to the gym because I don't like being in this vulnerable situation where other people are watching me exercise. And I don't like taking the time out of my day to travel to the gym and then deal with other people. And then I have to take a shower and then I have to get cleaned back up, put my makeup back on. And I don't enjoy that, but I do enjoy exercising. So exercise is one of the best things you can do for yourself. You want to keep your mind and your body healthy and strong, and exercise is a great way to do that. Exercise helps you lower depression rates. In fact, when I was dealing with a lot of clinical depression, exercise was what got me out of it. I was diagnosed with clinical depression way back. This is way back in like the 90s. And then I started going to the gym, and I started going to the gym every single day. And the depression lifted. I was able to resolve my problems and never fallen back into that. So if you're struggling to come up with a solution for a problem, go for a walk. If you are struggling with, you do need to understand that if you're struggling with your weight, if you're struggling with your body, if you're struggling with health issues, Exercise can help with mental health and physical health, and it doesn't have to be super strenuous. I'm not talking about training for an Ironman. I'm just talking about going out and going for a walk. But make sure that you have motion built into your day. Also, if you exercise, it helps you sleep better at night. And we all know what happens if you don't sleep. Also, it helps you boost your self-confidence. It helps you, there's just so much to it that I feel it's underrated. So make sure that you're exercising every day. Again, it doesn't have to be CrossFit. It can be, but it could be going for a walk. It could be a gentle yoga flow. It could be some Pilates. It doesn't have to be at the gym. It could be at home. It can be outside. Just make sure that you're moving your body, and dance is great. Make sure you're moving your body every day. A third habit that successful people have is they're careful about how they talk. And they want to be surrounded by positivity. Now, that doesn't mean that no one ever comes to them with problems. For me, I very seldom discuss problems. I have challenges. I don't have problems. Challenges are something you want to tackle and conquer. Okay. Problems are like obstacles. And most people they'll say it's a problem and they don't do anything further about it. You do have to be careful with the positivity. However, there is such a thing as toxic positivity. I've seen it. And that is where you don't even acknowledge that there are challenges or obstacles or something to get over. But do recognize that there are, that life isn't perfect. Business isn't perfect. But you want to approach things with the attitude that whatever it is that happens, I can get through it. You also want to be very careful about who you associate with. This, by the way, is something I've taught my children. And that means basically, if your 5 closest friends are drug addicts, you'll be the 6th. If your 5 closest friends are getting a divorce, you'll be the 6th. If your 5 closest friends are millionaires, you'll be the 6th. So be careful who you associate with. You want to make sure that the people you surround yourself with are generally happy, cheerful, upbeat, smiling, and able to work through anything that may come up. It doesn't mean they have to be happy all the time. I'm certainly not, but it does mean that that is their default. So you want to make sure that you are around the people that are like the person you want to become. And you also want to make sure that you're networking with those kind of people. Number 4 is preserve a work-life balance. Hustle culture is, it's a great thing. I love hustling. I love working. But we want to make sure, and this is something I even talk to my staff about. We want to make sure that we are mindful of our work-life balance. Now, this doesn't mean that every day you have to have a hard stop at 5. There's going to be times when you're going to work longer hours, especially if you're the business owner. And my audience is business owners. It does mean that you want to make sure that you have a clear end to your day. Again, for me as an accountant, sometimes during tax season, I work longer hours. Sometimes I get up a lot earlier. Sometimes I work 80 hours a week, but that's not the norm. Normal for me is actually less than 40. The reason for that is because, one, I have other obligations besides just work. I have family obligations. I have obligations to my spouse. I have obligations to my parents. I have obligations to my children, even though they're all grown up now. I have obligations to my friends. And I want to make sure that my life is not going to, my work life is not going to make me burn out. Burnout's a real thing. And it's very, very important to make sure that, one, you're training your customers to reach out to you during work hours. Okay. And I am very particular about that. I use scheduling apps. Outlook and Gmail both will let you schedule emails ahead of time. So if I do happen to have an evening where I can't sleep, and Chris is already asleep in bed, and I'm not able to sleep, but I want to go get some work done, I'll just schedule those emails for during work hours. But I do frequently tell people I have a hard stop at 5 o'clock. The reason for that is so that I can recharge my batteries and attack the day tomorrow with a fresh set of eyes, and I'm not just ruminating over everything that went wrong. I want to make sure that I'm fresh every morning, and part of that is to have a firm stop to your day. You can actually do this, by the way, going back to exercise, by doing things. So many of us are working from home. I know there's a big push to return to the office, but I do work from home. I've worked from home for over 20 years. And one of the things I do like to do to make sure I have this work-life balance shut off switch, one, my office is in a separate room in my home, so I can leave the office and shut the door. And the second thing is, at 5 o'clock, I go for a walk. I go for walks to kind of reset my brain away from work and into the other things that I need to do. I have actually, much to my shock, heard business leaders say things like, well, I sacrificed my marriage for my job and I think it was worth it. I really don't think anything is worth losing relationships over, particularly not a job. So, but then again, you have to define success your own way, I guess. And one of the things that I do to succeed is to make sure I'm spending time with my friends and family. And I make sure that my friends are the kind of people that I want to become myself. The fifth way that, the fifth habit that successful people have that most people don't, is to keep track of ways that you can improve. I have so many lists. I have ADHD. And because I have ADHD, I live by the list, because that helps me really focus in on the things that are important. I'm constantly looking for better ways to manage it so that I can, because I work like 3 times harder than most people, because I'm trying to overcome being female with ADHD and a night owl. So, so I work really hard to try to make sure my ADHD is managed. I don't medicate. And I'm constantly looking for, what time management is my worst bugbear. And I've tried many different methods. So I'm constantly making lists of how can I streamline things. I do tend to get a little overwhelmed, but that's because I'm right now working on a lot of things in the front end of my business. Well, it's really in the back end of the business, but I'm putting a lot of work in right now to make things easier for me down the line. So I'm constantly making a list of things I can improve. Do I need to build a funnel? Do I need to have a webinar recorded? Do I need to be more efficient in business meetings? What exactly do I need to do? So I'm constantly making lists of things that I think I could do to improve. And I start implementing those as quickly as I can. People who are not successful, they're not interested in improving anyway. They're the ones that are flipping hamburgers and saying that they should be paid $20 an hour for that. I don't agree with that. I was paid $3.14 an hour when I worked for McDonald's, and the whole point of that was to learn how to work for someone besides my mom or my grandmother. So I wasn't trying to raise a family on that. Of course, that was back in the 80s. I'll backtrack and say that was a long time ago, and that was the minimum wage. And make sure that if you are, well, I don't want to get into the political part at all, but if you are not bringing a lot of value to your organization, you should not be expected to be paid as someone who brings a lot of value to your organization. And I'm going to let that drop right there. The number 6 thing that most successful people do is to establish an effective network. Let me introduce you to the wonderful world of BNI. BNI stands for Business Networking International. I am a member. I am a raving fan. And the reason I'm a raving fan is because it does help me to do my networking in a formal setting. It helps me find new opportunities. It helps connect me to professionals that I never even knew that I needed, or I didn't even realize that my clients needed. One of my top referral partners, I refer a ton of business to her. I'm constantly sending her referrals, is an attorney. She does family law and business law, and she's excellent. She's one of the best. She's admitted to the bar in Utah, Connecticut, and New York because she's from the East. And so anytime I can refer someone to her, I do. That means people will come to me and say, I have this question about business. And I'll say, that's an attorney question. Let me send you to Kristen. Same thing with, and by the way, if you need an attorney in Utah, I know a bunch of them and I'm friends with them. So I've got family law, business. I have 2 business law attorneys, Kristen and Dana's the other one. I have a personal injury attorney. I have a criminal defense attorney that I'm friends with. And I know that if I ever need anything where I need legal help at all, they're on speed dial. So, and I also know people that I might not ever have met any other way. I know a flooring guy. I know a general contractor. I know a roofer. I know guys that do commercial insurance. I know guys that do car insurance and personal property insurance. I know someone who does health insurance. In fact, I know a couple of people that do health insurance. So the nice thing about that, from my perspective, from their perspective, they're getting referrals from me. From my perspective as a professional, that means that when I come across an opportunity, or when one of my clients asks, do you know anyone by any chance that does this? I can say yes. I can whip out their card and say, for real estate in Salt Lake City, you need to call Katie Saxton. Here's her phone number. And that means that she gets business and I look good because now I've solved a problem. You need a real estate agent? I got you a good one. So that really helps me look good. It also gives me some peace of mind that when the time comes for, and I'm going to need these professionals, chiropractors, physicians, attorneys, other accountants, wealth management people, I can then immediately, I can refer my clients to them, and I do. But I also know that these are people that I know, like, and trust. And if I do need their services, I already know who to call. Okay. So, and I do a lot of work to really nurture those connections. The 7th habit is giving. At BNI, we talk a lot about givers gain. When you read the scriptures, if you read the New Testament, Jesus talks about, you cast your bread upon the waters and it returns to you 100-fold. If you read about the Sermon on the Mount, where he fed the multitudes with 2 loaves and a couple of fishes, that is all about giving. If you give out, then you'll get it back somehow. And you never know how that's going to show up. It always seems kind of weird to me to talk about this because it does seem kind of woo-woo, but it's true. It's a principle. This is things like, I had a young man come to my door just a few minutes ago, actually. He's a handyman. He's looking for more work. And I started off saying, I don't need that. I have a husband that takes care of that. And I shut the door, came back in my office, and went, what the heck am I thinking? My brother-in-law, who's a handyman, is completely booked. I have a whole bunch of people who need a handyman. So I actually rushed back out and said, hey, wait, hold on. I need to talk to you. I don't need your service, but I have 6 people who do. And that means that this young man now has some contacts. He's going to be able to, I gave him a couple of cards, and I said, and I gave him the date and time of our BNI meeting. And I said, I know people who are looking for handymen. I don't need one myself, but I do know people who are looking. Please come back to my house later, bring me your contact information, and let me help you help yourself. Well, what do you think he's going to be thinking about tonight? And he's going to go home to his wife and he's going to say, man, I met this woman. She started off being kind of cold, because I don't like people knocking on my door. She started off being kind of reserved, but she came back out and she gave me all this information. He may never, ever, ever refer anyone to me, ever. I gave him my card, but he may never refer anyone to me, but he might. Okay, so it may be a friend of a friend of a friend years down the road who's going to call and say, oh my gosh, I heard from this guy that you were a bookkeeper and he said you were super nice, and so I really want to do business with you. Giving. I grew up in a faith tradition that really emphasizes paying tithing. So 10% goes to God. And that is both time and money. When you give, again, this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but it's 100% true. When you give of your time, your talents, your wealth, your treasure, all of it, it comes back. It comes back in ways you don't expect. It makes you feel good. Okay, let's start with that. You will feel good. You're going to feel good about helping someone else. It's going to make that person feel good. And it's also going to kind of tell the universe or God or whatever, however you want to phrase that, that you can be trusted with wealth, with whatever it is that you're after, because you're telling the world, I have abundance. Like the scripture says. Sorry, I know I'm referring back to the Bible and I typically don't, but some of these are such great principles. If you think about the parable of the talents, where the first guy doubled his money, the second guy doubled his money, and the third guy went and buried his talent. And the guy that buried his talent got that talent taken away from him and given to someone who had shown good stewardship. That's really how the universe works. So if you are constantly giving and you are trying to do better, you are helping others, you're going to have that come back to you. Again, I apologize if you're an atheist, if you don't believe the way I do, that's okay. I am not here to convert anybody, but I am going to, that's just such a good example of how things can work. So givers gain. And if you give out, it can be time, it can be talent, it can be money. You will get that back eventually. The 8th thing that highly successful people do is they diversify their income. I just did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, and I want to talk about this a little bit more in depth. When I talk about diversifying your income, I don't mean have 5 jobs, and I don't mean spread yourself so thin that you can't do any of them well. Your first job, your main job, you need to put your focus on because that's the one that pays the bills. But you want to also do things like you want to have an investment account of some kind. I have one. I have a friend that does wealth management. She manages my money for me. And it's always exciting to go back in after a couple of months and be like, oh my gosh, it's grown some more. And I do add to that every month. It's just part of my, it is a set it and forget it type of a thing. But when I'm talking about multiple streams of income, again, it does not mean multiple jobs. You can't do that. You only have so many hours in a day. But it could mean you work with one of your networking professionals and maybe develop a revenue share type of a thing. So I have one program that I work with that's revenue share. I have people that I refer to that give me a referral fee. I don't request them. I don't worry about whether or not I get that or not, but when I do, it's really nice. I also, one of the things I like about being a business owner rather than employee is that by nature, my income comes in multiple streams. So if I lose one client, it makes me feel bad. I really want to serve them well, but it's also not the end of the world. I'm not going to have to fold my business tomorrow, and I don't have to go find another client tomorrow. I have a lot of clients, and that means that if one goes out of business, I have more streams of income from more different people. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. You also may want to consider investing in real estate. You may want to consider investing in other industries. There's a lot that you could do to diversify your income that does not require you to go out and get another job. So, but successful people have income coming in from multiple sources. Again, it could be from multiple customers in their own business, or it could be from multiple businesses, or it could be from affiliate marketing. It could be from other things that doesn't require as much work. By the way, passive income is a myth. Okay, if you're creating income, it's not really going to be passive. You have to do the work, but it could be residual. And so I love my residual income. I love the things that come in that I don't have to work quite so hard for. I love having staff that do the client-facing stuff for me. That is part of what helps me diversify my own income. Okay. The ninth habit that highly successful people have is they prioritize professional development. I talked about this a little bit ago, particularly in habit 1. But they seek opportunities to grow their careers. So highly professional people, highly successful people are going to seminars. They're developing masterminds. They are talking to the gurus. They are looking for new skills to be able to maximize their ability to make money and their ability to be good spouses, siblings, parents, friends, etc., etc., etc. We have a lot of roles that we're trying to fulfill in our lives. So you want to prioritize personal development and professional development. And to be honest, they are very much kind of the same thing. You want to strengthen and improve the skills that you have. And you want to also have these opportunities to network. I've had people kind of suggest that maybe I don't want to network with other tax professionals, CPAs, EAs, bookkeepers, accountants. The fact is that I do. And the reason I do is they may have some information that I don't have. They may have a specific piece of the tax law that maybe I don't work with as well. They may specialize in high net worth individuals that I don't want to tackle. I may be able to offload some of my excess work to them so that my clients are happy and well taken care of. I want those networking opportunities. Just because they're in the same industry that I am does not mean that they're not good contacts for me. And then successful people encourage and accept feedback. not all the feedback that you receive is the kind that you want. In other words, it can be kind of hard to hear. So, and it can come through as criticism. When you receive criticism of any kind, you really want to take a look at that and see, is there a nugget of truth here? You may even want to have some very honest conversations with the criticizer. One of the things I absolutely hate is when clients ghost us. It doesn't happen very often, but it has happened. What I really want is an exit interview. I want to sit down with that client and say, okay, clearly we weren't a good fit, and that's okay. I never take that personally. But if we weren't a good fit, what could we have done better to make you want to stay with us, or to improve your experience with us, or to help to be a better support to you? When I'm able to get that feedback, it helps me craft my marketing messages. It helps me to be a better accountant, a better business owner, a better boss. I did that with the employees that I've had that have left. I want to make sure that I understand how to be a better boss, how to be, and I actually go looking for this kind of feedback. So one of my guilty pleasures that I really shouldn't do is to surf Reddit. I have a love-hate relationship with Reddit. I don't like a lot of the things that I read on there, but sometimes I get these nuggets of things where people are complaining about their bosses. They're being completely unreasonable. I've seen people complain that, my mother died last week and my boss wouldn't let me go to the funeral. And I look at that and go, well, that's definitely not the kind of boss I want to be. So I look at that and say, okay, so how can I be a better boss based on their experience, while still making sure that my clients are taken care of? So I want to encourage feedback. I really prefer it as feedback and not criticism, but I do encourage it. I want to hear about it. And it could be good. It could be all the things that I do right. It could also be all the things that I could improve on. But I don't know what I don't know. So if there's things I could improve on and nobody's telling me anything, I won't know. On the other hand, it may be something that I'm just not willing to change. For example, I was recently told that the voicemail message on my personal cell phone, which is a number that I only give to friends and family. I do not want anybody calling me on that phone for professional purposes, unless it's one of my employees. In fact, there's no reason for anyone to have that number except for friends and family. And the reason I set that boundary in place is because I did have clients calling me at 11 o'clock at night. This was back before I had an office line, when it was all commingled. And they were demanding that I do work for them in the middle of the night, literally in the middle of the night. Again, going back to I have boundaries around my work-life balance so that I don't have to do that. So I set up an office line because, one, I want, as an employer, I don't necessarily want my employees' phone numbers to be out there. Number two, as a business owner, I want that boundary between personal and business. And I think it looks more professional if you have that boundary than if you're just letting anybody call your cell phone. Again, my friends, my network, a lot of professional acquaintances do have that cell phone number. And then one of my friends, I have a voicemail message on that basically says, if you are calling for bookkeeping purposes, please hang up and dial this number. This is a personal cell phone. It's for friends and family only. I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but it really was, If you're calling about accounting or bookkeeping, call the office. Don't call me. And one of my contacts said, that seems kind of negative. And I said, I don't see it that way. I don't want anybody but my friends and family to call me at that number. And so and I do still have clients that I've had for a long time who call me on my cell phone. So I let it go to cell phone, or I let it go to voicemail so that they get that message. And I'm very intentional about it. So even though it may come across as being not nice, it's not something I want to be nice about. I want to be, this is a hard boundary for me. If you need me in my professional capacity and you are not my personal friend, my friend, one of my friends who is an attorney does call me on my cell phone to ask me questions about cases and things. And that's fine. Or she'll call me on my business phone. I'll get the alert and I'll call her back on my cell phone. That's fine too. We've discussed what that boundary is. Okay. But just one of my clients, I don't want them calling me at 11 o'clock at night. I don't want them calling me at 2 in.the morning because they just had a brainwave and they just felt like they needed to call. And folks, it's happened. So I took the feedback that, this is kind of, it could be construed as rude. And I said, okay, I can see that. However, my boundary is this, this, and this. And if they're violating my boundary, that's what they're going to get. My friends know, call, and if you start to hear the voicemail, hang up and text me. But some of my clients don't seem to understand this particular boundary. So I am a little harsh, and that's intentional. So I accepted the feedback. I considered it. And I said, well, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm not willing to change this at this time. And that's okay. Some other habits, these are the top 10. So that was number 10, is to accept feedback. Some of the others that a lot of successful people do, they journal. This helps to not emotionally vomit all over your friends and family when you've had a rough day. It helps you process some emotions. There's a lot to be said for journaling. Another thing that highly professional people do is to step back from technology. I know Dave Rubin, whether you agree with him or not, is irrelevant, folks, but he does take the month of August off from all tech. He puts down his cell phone. He is off the internet. He doesn't look at anything. He goes and he does something completely off grid. And that seems to be working for him. Another one is to be an active listener. And that means reflecting. So if you are an active listener and I come in and I say, I am so angry, an active, passive listener is going to go, An active listener is going to say, really? What happened for you to be angry about? Are you really angry, or is that covering up some other emotion? Successful people are also organized, I'm told. I'm organized when it comes to my clients. I'm not organized when I come to myself. Again, that's ADHD rearing its ugly head. But in order for me to deal with ADHD, I have to be very organized. So I put a lot of effort into that. They are detail oriented. They do a lot of self-reflection. They have clear goals. Sometimes those goals, by the way, are more of a process. So one of my goals is to have a healthy body. And so one of the things that I want to do to have a healthy body is to practice yoga every day and exercise every day. So the goal can't be to exercise every day. That's a habit. So I want to make sure that you understand that. My goal is to have a very healthy body. And I set the goal. I set my goal weight. I determined what eating plan I needed to follow. And I wanted to make sure that that was a goal, rather than my goal is to go to the gym every day. In order for me to have a healthy body, I need to have a habit of exercising every day. So that's where my goal is to maybe you set a goal to develop this habit and to go 180 days where you exercise every day, or to do 75 hard or something similar to that. And it has to be very clear. They talk a lot about SMART goals. So specific, measurable, attainable, relatable, relevant, and time bound. So a SMART goal would be, I would like to weigh 125 pounds by December 31st. That would be a SMART goal. It's time bound, it's relevant. It's something I really want to do. I'm almost there. Successful people are flexible. That means that if something comes up, they just kind of roll with it. Rigid people tend to not be very not to be very successful. Tend to. None of these, by the way, is if you don't do these things, it doesn't mean that you're a failure, but it does mean that you're making it harder than it needs to be. Successful people usually have a weekly plan. They usually even set time aside in their day, first thing in the morning, to plan out their day so that they know what they're going to do. If they're like me and they are not a morning person, I cannot get up early in the morning unless it's to save my life or to catch a flight. I'll do this in the evening ahead of time. So I will I have my weekly planning, and then I have my night before, I'll do my daily planning, so that I know exactly what it is that I'm going to work on the next day. Successful people tend to have routines to help them to be successful. They often meditate. They often make sure that their spaces are calm and peaceful rather than chaotic. How they do this with children, I don't know. They do set aside time for R&R. They are mindful and intentional about their priorities. They take care of themselves. They are disciplined. In other words, they exhibit self-discipline. That means you're not going to find too many CEOs who are sitting down with a 5-pound bag of M&Ms eating the whole thing. You're going to find CEOs and other highly successful people being very they may still eat candy, but they're going to be intentional about it. And really, a lot of these things that I'm seeing in this list are about being intentional about what you do. So self-discipline. Successful people are actually economical in a different way. So I just saw where Elon Musk was criticized for taking a private jet on a fairly short haul. I want to say it was from like LA to Sacramento. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but it wasn't that far of a trip, and he took a jet. That was actually economical for him. Okay, it might not be for me. Or as I put it a lot with my husband, when I was a single mom, I had a lot of time and very little money. So when I would go back east to see my parents, it's a 27-hour drive. But I had a lot of time and no money. So for me to haul 3 or 4 or 5 kids in the car was actually more economical for me at that time of my life. It's a 3-day drive, 27 hours. At my age, I can do 10-hour days tops. So it was a 3-day drive. It was economical for me at that time. Today, however, I wouldn't do that. For one thing, airline prices have come down. For another thing, it's just me. And for a third thing, my time is now a priority. So it's not economical for me to spend 3 days driving when I can do it in 4 hours on a flight. Okay, so those are some of the things that, if the list says being economical, and I'm going to say, think about everything that goes into that, not just time, not just money, but both. Okay. A lot of successful people like to wake up early. I don't think that's required to be successful, but I do think you need to understand your own circadian rhythm, when you are most awake and alert, and when you are at your best, and then work from that. Okay. I do, however, agree with prioritizing sleep. I see a lot of teenagers do this. My youngest just ended his teenage stage. He just got married in August. And there were times when he would not prioritize sleep. He's a gamer. So he would sit up all night and play video games with his buddies online. It was awesome. I loved it. I enjoyed hearing that he was so excited about it. However, as you get older and you understand what it takes, you start to realize that you have to be well rested, and you have to have your ideal amount of sleep in order to be awake, alert, and at your best and refreshed. So I think most of us in our 20s went through a lot of the party. I'm going to stay up till 3 in the morning and get up at 5. I did that. I did that in high school for years. And when you're young, you can do that. As you're older, that circuit kind of burns out. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough sleep for your body. Again, I am not going to preach being a morning person if you're not. I don't think that's required, but I do think you need to be intentional about getting enough sleep and about finding those peaceful times. Again, for me, it's late at night. For someone else, it might be early in the morning. For my husband, it's early in the morning, when there's no one else awake, when you don't have a lot of people trying to get at your time, when you can do the quiet things like meditate. I can't meditate first thing in the morning. I'll fall asleep sitting up. I can, however, meditate at 10 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning when I have not gone to bed yet. So you really have to understand how your body works and how your sleep schedule is, and then work with that. Successful people are mindful of their time, that we're all given the same 24 hours in a day. None of us know when we are up. There are people who die very young. There are people that die very, very old. We don't know what that is. So we want to be intentional with our time. That is a finite resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can always make more money, but once your time is gone, it's gone. I can never go back and be 20 again. Not that I would want to. I can never go back and enjoy my children's babyhood again. They're grown. So you want to be very mindful about how you spend your time. And that doesn't mean that you have to be 100% productive 24 hours a day. There are times when it's appropriate to waste time, but you want to be intentional about that. There's been times this past summer when my sister-in-law called and said, "Do you want to go to the pool?" And I said, "Well, I had a lot to do, but you know what? I really need to recharge my batteries, and I really want to prioritize this relationship. So yes, I want to go to the pool." And I rearranged my schedule. But that was, again, you have to be thoughtful and intentional about it. Successful people tend to have high expectations of themselves. They are not, however, perfectionists. They see problems as opportunities, which I touched on. They are not going to give up when things get hard. They have no problem with taking risks. And they're going to exhibit a lot of confidence. They have strong communication skills. They take responsibility for their actions. Going back to seeing problems as opportunities, they welcome challenges. They are punctual. The reason punctuality is important is that if you are late, you're making everyone else around you late. So if you're mindful about how and intentional about how you spend your time, you will also be mindful and intentional about how other people spend their time. So you will be on time to your meetings, or even a few minutes early. I have ADHD, as I said, which means I'm always trying to do that one last thing before I do that, before I leave for an appointment. And I've had to start I really miss Google now. Because it actually had an alert that would come up that ahead of time that would say, you need to leave at this time to be 5 minutes early. And that was a godsend. I don't have that app anymore. Google did away with it. I thought I had one that would do the same thing, but that seems to be discontinued. I have to be very intentional about setting or blocking out time in my calendar of, okay, this is my meeting and it's here. And I know it takes me 20 minutes to get there, so I need to block out a half hour ahead of time. That literally says travel to your appointment. Because again, if I'm late, it throws everybody around me, not just me, it throws my schedule off, but it throws everyone else's schedule off too. So being punctual is it's a courtesy to everyone. And if you are not punctual, you should expect that meetings get canceled. I did have a potential client. She was 15 minutes late for a meeting. And then when she finally got in, I said, I have other things that I can't spend an hour with you now because you're 15 minutes late. Let's reschedule for tomorrow. Believe me, she was on time the next day. But I was apologetic. I was kind to her, but I was also firm about, I have everything scheduled down to very small increments of time. And if you're late, it makes me late for everything else. So, which kind of leads us to the next one, which is you take responsibility for your actions. Another thing successful people do that I do some of the time, but not always, is to write out their tasks ahead of time. I used to write out everything I wanted to do for the day in my planner. Since then, I put a lot of this into Microsoft To Do, and I've started writing down the things that I know that I can accomplish. So if I have a deadline, I will write down the things I absolutely have to do that day. That's what goes in my planner. And I actually do some modified calendar blocking to help me recognize where this fits in my day. Successful people take breaks throughout the day. They're not on 24/7. One of the best productivity tools that I have ever come across, by the way, is the Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro comes from the Italian word for tomato, and it comes from a little kitchen timer that was shaped like a tomato. The guy that came up with it, whose name absolutely escapes me if I ever knew it, would actually just set the timer for 25 minutes or 20 minutes, and he would work on something for that 20 to 25 minutes. At the end of that time, he would then set it for 5 minutes and take a 5-minute break. I do this all day, every day. If I don't have meetings during the day, I am running my Pomodoro timer. I have the timer app on my PC that I use, and I couple it with the timer on my smartwatch so that I work 20 to 25 minutes. I take a 5 to 10 minute break. During that 5 to 10 minutes, I'm usually doing something, because I work at home and I'm a woman, so I'm cleaning. So I will run and I will do something like fold the laundry. It doesn't take a lot of brain power, but I can then, in the back of my mind, just be thinking about whatever I was just working on, come back to that with fresh eyes. And that's a win all the way around, because number one, my house is getting clean. Number two, I'm focused on what I actually need to do. Number three, I'm coming back to this every few minutes with a fresh set of eyes. Instead of just watching all the words jumble together, I leave, I come back, and sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, it was right under my nose. Why didn't I understand the solution? So, definitely take your breaks, okay? You want to be open to solutions. That's where feedback comes in. So if one of my employees calls and says, Donna, I think we should do this way, and it's not something that I've ever thought of, well, even if it has, I want them to tell me, and then I have done things like say, I've tried this before and it didn't work, but maybe if we make some tweaks, it will work. And if it doesn't work, then I'll say, well, we tried it and it didn't work. So you want to be open to solutions. AI is a game changer for me personally, because it helps me outline a lot of things. I'm working on a webinar for new client or potential new clients. I'm working on another webinar for clients from a different, I have some sales guys that will set appointments with me. I want them to start directing the client to this webinar. So in order for me to write out this webinar and be very intentional about what I'm saying, I am using AI to help me outline it, and to help me make sure that it is good content. AI can't do the thinking for me, but it can help me use good grammar. AI is an innovation, but it itself is not innovative. It's still a computer program. So I do use it to help me write these webinars, but it doesn't do all the work itself. I still have to do a lot of work in it. But I am open to anything that helps me do my job better. Another thing a lot of successful people do is to hit that really disgusting, horrible task that you really don't want to do. They do that first thing in the morning. The reason for that is if you do that, it's the eat the frog method, and it is Brian Tracy is who really popularized it. In fact, he has a book called Eat the Frog. And that's the idea of if you choke down this frog first thing in the day, then the rest of the day is going to be great because you did the hard thing first and now you're done. So that's something to consider. However, because I am not a morning person, I will usually eat my frog right after lunch. Why? Or right before lunch, but it's never right at 9 o'clock in the morning because I'm still not quite awake yet. I will hit that at about 10:30. But when you are most awake, when you are most alert, you want to hit that as soon as possible because it's something that you really want to postpone. Successful people do stay up to date on news in their field. I don't know why this was listed separately, but okay. They have a lot of integrity. They're honest with themselves and with others. And because they're honest with themselves, they're also honest about what their values are. If you value family life, but you put your work ahead of everything, then you're not being honest with yourself. If you value physical fitness, but you're sitting around eating Doritos, you're not being honest with yourself. So, and honestly, that's the hardest thing for me, is to be honest with me and to keep my commitments to myself. This kind of looks like things like if you put working out on your calendar, that's an appointment that you're required to keep. So you want to make sure that you keep your commitments to yourself. That's everything from working out, going for a walk, having a date night with your spouse. Do the things that reflect your true values. If you have values that you kind of wish you had, but you hadn't really done them, again, if you're really into physical, if you really want to be physically fit, but you're not there now, and you're catching yourself doing things like sitting in front of the TV instead of going for a walk. Again, it doesn't take a lot of effort to become fit. It just takes consistent effort. Or if you say that you value attending a faith community, a church, a synagogue, a mosque, whatever, but you never go, understand that what that is it's undermining your integrity with yourself. So you want to make sure that you're keeping those commitments to yourself as well as those to others. It's really easy to keep commitments to others because they tend to call and text and ask, where are you? But it's much harder when it's yours. So you want to have integrity in all aspects of your life. Successful people tend to have a creative outlet of some kind. They build on their strengths. They enjoy hobbies that are not work related. And they take the time to appreciate. One of the things that's not on this list that I think should be, and this is what I'm going to end with, is they show gratitude. That shows up with the giving to others, time and money. It's a form of gratitude. One of the game changers in my business was when I started keeping a gratitude journal. And I literally every night was coming up with a minimum of 3 things to be thankful for. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, so this is going to be a great time to start doing that again. The things that I was grateful for were things like, I woke up this morning. Some days that's what all I could come up with. I woke up this morning. I am not 6 feet under. Other days it was a long list of, hey, I had lunch with my friend, and I valued spending time with them. Oh, I got 2 new clients today. My kids came over for dinner. It could be a whole long list. And other days it was things like, well, my eyes opened and I can see, and I have all of my fingers and toes, and I'm able to breathe. But I do think that gratitude is probably one of the biggest things that you can do to be successful. The reason for that, one, it is kind of a woo-woo concept again, but it is when you show gratitude, you get more of that. So it's like telling the universe, that was awesome. More of that, please. I really appreciated that. You just tend to get more of that. Whereas if you are negative and you don't show any gratitude and you're nasty and you're really telling the universe, yeah, okay, I'm going to talk about all the things that I ruminated about that were so awful. More of that, please. And the universe will say, well, okay, here's a shit sandwich. So gratitude is a way of being very intentional about what you want in your life. Sometimes, so I was at the nail salon today and I heard a lady say one of her challenges with dating was all it really did for her was to determine what she did not want. And I thought, sometimes that's what it takes. And other times you can throw away a whole wonderful relationship because you're just negative. So if you're showing gratitude, I'm not saying to stay in abusive relationships, by the way. You should be able to identify those. But if you have, my husband is wonderful. He is kind, he's generous to a fault. He brings me flowers a lot. I have roses on my desk. You can't really see. I have roses on my desk for no reason. Okay, because he brought them to me. And he cooks, and he's actually a very, very good cook. He shows me that he loves me a lot. It took him 10 years for me to go out with him. When I sit down and I practice gratitude about this relationship, it is going to be things like, what am I thankful for today? Chris brought me roses. Chris treated me with generosity. Chris treated me with respect in this way. Chris, he started a business specifically to take care of me. He makes sure to have a date night with me, and I'm thankful for that. Whatever it is, I go down and I write down everything I'm thankful for about him. And what that does then is, if we do have an argument, which we don't very often, but if we do have an argument about something, I can then go back and say, he is actually a really awesome person. It's something you have to write down in the moment. On the other hand, and it also helps me to verify, you need to have 5 positive interactions with someone for every 1 negative one. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of the positive ones. And if I start to see that the negativity is overwhelming the relationship, then there's some things that I can do to adjust that. And there's some deal breakers. So my first husband was physically abusive. And emotional and mental always go with physical. So my first husband was abusive. When he hit me, that was the deal breaker. Okay. When it got to the point that we were arguing a lot more than we were being nice to each other, that should have been the deal breaker. But I was young and dumb. But my point is, if I'm practicing gratitude, I'm going to attract more of those things to me. Again, this is not excusing other people's bad behavior. This is only what I can control. So again, if I start to say, I got a new client today and I'm thankful for that, I tend to get more new clients. If I got a new employee, if I hired a new employee and they're fantastic and I'm writing about that and I'm keeping track of how awesome they are, then I tend to have more awesome people want to come work for me. If I'm positive, by the way, negative people hate positive people. If I'm positive and kind and generous, but I'm still intentional about who I'm spending my time with, I'm going to get the kind of people around me that I want. So you need to practice gratitude. That's it. And I probably rambled on entirely too long. But I did want to kind of cover this. I probably am going to break these up into more specific videos later. If you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, please drop me an email at donna@mysimplebookkeeping.com. I would love to interview you, talk to you, find out about your business and your perspective on business. We do cover a lot of topics here, so that's it for today. And I will talk to you again very soon.